The most common of symptoms is anxiety, fidgety, constantly looking around, being attentive of everything that's going on around them, inability to focus for long periods of time. Conversations become short and sporadic, staccato. And a good example is a combat veteran will go into a restaurant. And the common myth is that they sit so they can see the exits. We sit so we can see the entrances, because that's where the threat is. This is what's coming in. And first of all, we're not trained to run out the exits anyway. We're trained to engage, which I'll explain in a minute. Engagement means escalate, escalate, escalate until it's resolved. Now the good news is with an enemy combatant, you can wear them down and overcome them. The bad news is with a wife, you just get uglier and nastier and angrier, and so it can get out of hand very quickly. But in the restaurant, he'll look around. He or she will look around and identify threats. If there's 3 people talking conspiratorially over there, they'll notice them. If there's somebody that's sweating inordinately over there, they'll notice them, because there's something going on there. They'll notice the amount of traffic in and out, how many times the servers come in and out, how many times people change tables, what the exit rate is. And then they've got to be in touch with this conversation over here, because they might be talking about something that they're going to do, and this conversation over here because they also have to know what's going on over there. Because in a combat situation, what you miss kills you, what you don't pay attention to. So these people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, having fought in cities, are used to keeping track of everything. Everything. Now when they come back here, they continue to do that. And it not only creates diversion in a relationship, or with a couple's dinner, for example, it creates an inability to relax, an inability to sit back. So one of the most obvious signs that someone can see is this lack of ease, this dis-ease. That's somebody who's constantly vigilant. They'll notice discomfort in crowds. They'll notice that when their progress is going to be impeded, either because of crowds or because of something else, they'll be real animated for a while until they get it resolved. They get a travel route established. They escalate. They're very intolerant of dumb questions, and a dumb question is anything that's asked that is meant to reduce responsibility. A minimum standards question, if you will. And disrespect. They'll see a teenager badmouth their parent, one of their parents, or a senior citizen, and a veteran will immediately begin to build up about that. So it's not difficult to identify the symptoms. They're pretty obvious. The difficulty is in not inadvertently throwing gas on the fire. For example, a veteran will come in the door and their spouse or their partner will see that they're clearly agitated, clearly upset. Now it might be that somebody cut them off on the freeway. It might be that they went into Walmart and noticed someone abusing their parent or talking rudely to their parent. It might be any one of a million things, but they notice they're agitated, clearly agitated. And so the person will walk up and say, "So what's wrong?" And the veteran will respond, "Nothing." Because how do you explain everything's wrong? How do you explain that everything upsets me? So they'll say nothing. And then the partner might say, "Well, are you sure you don't want to talk about it?" Or they'll say, "So this is another thing we don't get to talk about?" Or, "Why won't you talk with me about it?" Now the combat veteran will immediately go to, "I'm being cornered now. I'm being cornered now. I'm under siege." And the escalation will start. The escape, the overcome, the desired outcome will start. And that was never intended, but that's the result. So when you see an agitated vet, the best thing to do is maybe, if you're close enough and intimate with him, squeeze the shoulder. If you're just friends with him or an acquaintance with him, say, "Looks like it's been a tough day." To press them and want details is valuing space. So it's those inadvertent things that we can coach family members about. When this happens, your best course is this way. And of course, there's tons of sad things. The moral injury of war. The things, inadvertently, someone will say, thank you for your service. And the serviceman will immediately have a twinge of guilt. Because in my own experience in Vietnam, I really wasn't fighting for American freedom. I wasn't fighting for your freedom. I was fighting to stay alive. And I knew the Vietnamese were no threat to America. I believed America was under threat by communism. And that allowed me to follow my flag and to do what was necessary for my flag. And to believe in my country and act in situations that weren't very clear to me. There wasn't the clarity of a Hitler, or there wasn't the clarity of an attack by Japan on civilians. It was us in a foreign land fighting for a country that we really didn't understand. And this moral injury sometimes, well, I think in all times is probably the most insidious of all the damage done. And it's hard to diffuse. Someone comes in and tells me that they had to kill a child because one of the enemy was holding the child in front of them and firing at them. And that's, in my own personal experience, the hardest thing in the world to do. That's the toughest thing to live with. And see, the enemy in the Middle East knows that. So that's a common thing for them to use children as shields. And when an American does that, I can't say to him, what else could you have done? Because that simply puts the lid back on the bottle. That tells him to dismiss it. The only way I can approach that is say, that's got to be tough to live with. That's got to be really, really hard to live with. That way I validate it, I don't dismiss it, and I don't say anything stupid like, I know how you feel. A person who hasn't done it could not, possibly know how to feel. Just express empathy. And if you're moved to say thank you for your service, perhaps a more appropriate line might be, thanks for being willing to put yourself what you put yourself through for our country. Because it is our country's involvement.
But they're well-meaning.
They are well-meaning, and that's why it's inadvertent. It's such an insidious disorder. I mean, it's everywhere, and even if you say to a veteran, I didn't mean for that to happen, that infuriates him. How many times do you think I heard that in Vietnam when somebody got killed? I didn't mean to pick up that. I didn't know it was booby-trapped.
Right.
I didn't mean to fall asleep on lines. And all of this stuff, it kind of fades from sharpness as the time goes by. But it's still, when I hear that, I go right back to, you can't reverse what you did. You should have been present enough to make a deliberate choice at the time.